Welcome to part 2 of the history of Osea video. This time I'll be talking about my opinions and ideas about the country. Just keep in mind that if there's anything I didn't mention in part 1, then it's a theory and not a fact. As many of you pointed out, Osea is a stranger equivalent to the United States. But adding to that, I also think that Osea resembles Canada. Geographically, Osea extends way north of the Ocean continent, almost reaching the Arctic just like Canada does. Another similarity to Canada is that the region of South Belka / North Osea, which was annexed or conquered, if you wish to say so, by Osea after the Balkan War. While the annexation of North Osea is a fairly recent event, it resembles the history of the Canadian province of Quebec, which was conquered by the English in 1759 during the 7 Years' War, when they fought against the French. Both countries feature a unique region with very different historical roots and culture, and they both had their separatist movements, with Quebec's FLQ, Le Front de Libération du Québec, or Quebec's Liberation Front, and North Osea's Falcons of Dawn, both terrorist organizations that carried attacks in the 1960s in Quebec and 2005 in Osea. In recent history, the Osean government has implemented a pacifist foreign policy much more similar to Canada's than the American more interventionist policy. There were several cuts to the military budget, and the surplus went to programs related to space development, which is something Canada has done in recent years, and I can't even think about the US cutting its military budget, especially with Trump in the White House. Now, talking about Osea's early history, there's a lot of room for speculation, but I want to talk about the conflict between Osea and Belka in 1905, a conflict known as the Osean War. We don't know who started the war, we don't know why they started, and we don't even know who won the war. There's no official in-game confirmation for that. But I believe that if we analyze one of the first quotes in Ace Combat 5, we could assume that Belka was the one who started the conflict, but Osea did manage to defend itself.
15 years ago, there was a war. Well, war's broken out here plenty of times before. They've tried to invade the Southlands through the Northern Valley time and time again. Luck was never on their side, though, and their victories didn't last long.
The way Jeanette says time and time again sounds more like if Belka waged war more than once, more than just the Balkan War, which they did, and in fact they fought against Osea as well. And when he says the Balkans failed, that sounds too like Osea won the war in a defensive way. Jumping to Strangel's Cold War, it's obviously a reference to the real-life Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, but unlike the real-world conflict, apparently neither Osea nor Lithuania financed or fought wars in other countries, as far as we know, of course. In the real world, the Korean and the Vietnam Wars weren't just civil wars. Politically, you could see the battle between the two sides, capitalism against communism, or the United States against the Soviet Union. But the Cold War wasn't just fought in proxy wars like what I've mentioned before. It was also fought through diplomacy and intervention in other countries. For example, the countries of Eastern Europe fell under communist regimes orchestrated by the Soviet Union, while Latin America remained aligned to the US when the Americans helped many military dictatorships rise to power in countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. We could think something like that happened where the southern part of Osea fell into the Osean sphere of influence, while on the other side of the ocean, Veruza, and yes, that's the name of the continent, was under the influence of Lithuania. But we don't have any proof of that, and the Strangel's Cold War was only about 16 years, which is not that long and not enough time for that kind of stuff to happen. But if it did, it would be interesting to have an Cold War Ace Combat game. The Strangel's Cold War ended when both countries joined forces against Belka during the Balkan War, and ironically that's how the Cold War started, after tensions between the former World War II allies started to rise. Later on, after the Balkan War, Osea, like many other countries, embraced pacifist policies and was one of the leading countries in promoting space development. After 2010, we are only led to believe that Osea became even more important in the international community by supporting the development and construction of the ISAF, the International Space Elevator, and by becoming one of the key nations in the IUPF, the International Union Peacekeeping Forces. To finish it up, I would also like to talk about Osea's flag. Looking at it, we can see it is inspired by the flag of the European Union, but I noticed that Osea has 7 stars and one of them has a different size. It is smaller than the others. If the 6 larger stars represent 6 different states from the Osean Federation, I think the small one could represent the region of North Osea, which used to be the region of South Belka. Both the star and the province are located towards the northeast, and because North Osea is a former Balkan territory, that would explain why it is being treated unequally to the other regions. But of course, that's something I can't prove because I wasn't able to find any picture of the Osean flag before the signing of the peace treaty in the city of Lumen in the end of the Balkan War. Now that I have talked about my theories, here comes my impression about Osea and how it relates to Earth. Geography. Something like the United States, Canada and Brazil together. Because Osea is huge and goes from the equator, represented by Brazil, to almost the North Pole, represented by Canada. Also, note all those islands in that area. And you have the US filling the middle area as a transition zone, and also note the Great Lakes region. History. Mostly American, but with some Canadian aspects such as the North Osea South Belka region as Quebec. Government. Like its history, mostly American, but with some Canadian aspects such as the pacifist policies. Military. This one is very American, but perhaps a little bit Japanese too, since Osea's military branches are similarly named like Japan's, as it contains defense force in their names. Anyways, these were just my ideas about Osea, so please don't take them as facts. Now, as for the next video in the History of Strange Donation series, I haven't decided yet, nor will I. I'll leave the decision up to you, so you can vote now on Facebook. There's a poll there on what country you'd rather have as the next episode, and I'll give you a week before closing the poll. This was today's video. I hope you have enjoyed, and of course stay tuned in the channel for more Ace Combat.